order of business until about 2:15 this afternoon. At that point, lawmakers will turn to a judicial nomination. They'll vote on that nomination at about 2:30 Eastern. And now we go live to the U.S. Senate floor here on
The Senate will come to order. Today's opening prayer will be offered by the Reverend Joe Bates, Sr. from the Northwest Conference of the United Methodist Church of Alabama.
Eternal God, Father of all humankind, we come before you with humble hearts to ask for your blessings and guidance. Pour out your wisdom and discernment upon these elected representatives of our people and fill their hearts with peace and goodwill. Enable them, we pray, to practice just and merciful leadership that will bless and enhance the lives of all of our citizens. We thank you, O God, for all the ways you have led us in the past. Bless us this day by helping us to walk in your path of righteousness so that justice and peace may prevail in our nation and in our world. To you, dear God, we give our honor and our praise, even as we seek your mercy, and we pray to you in your holy name. Amen.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance to our flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The clerk will read a communication to the Senate.
Washington, D.C., March 10, 2011. To the Senate. On the provisions of Rule 1, Paragraph 3 of the Standing Rules of the Senate, I hereby appoint the Honorable Tom Udall, a senator from the state of New Mexico, to perform the duties of the chair, signed Daniel K. Inouye, President pro tempore.
Mr. President.
Majority Leader is recognized.
Following any leader remarks, there will be a period of morning business until 2:15 p.m. today. The senator is permitted to speak for up to 10 minutes. At 10:30, Senator Moran, will be recognized to speak for up to 15 minutes to deliver his maiden speech to the Senate. At 2:15 p.m., the Senate will proceed to executive session to consider the nomination of Max Oliver Cogburn of North Carolina to be a district judge for the Western District of North Carolina. Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent there be a total of 45 minutes for debate on the nomination, with the provisions of the previous order remaining in effect, with the vote being at, rather at 2:30, it be at 3 p.m. today.
Is there objection? Without objection, so ordered.
As a result of the agreement just entered, there will be a vote on confirmation of the Cogburn nomination at 3 p.m. today. Further, the Senate Small Business Committee reported S-493, the Reauthorization Act of 2011. They did that yesterday. We hope to begin consideration of that bill early next week. Mr. President, it's time once again for us to get down to business. Yesterday's budget votes didn't bring us any closer to a conclusion, but it did bring one thing to our minds, and it does that very clearly. That lesson is this: one party alone will not reach a resolution without the other's cooperation and consent. We vote on the Republican budget proposal and on the Democratic budget proposal. Neither plan came close to the 60 votes needed to pass, or even the 51 votes would have represented a majority of the Senate. But the exercise wasn't in vain. We've demonstrated publicly and on the record that we know that the answer lies somewhere between, somewhere in the middle. Now it's time to find that answer in a budget that will reflect our values, keep the country running, and create jobs. I can speak only for my caucus when I say we accept the lessons of yesterday's vote. We know that we'll have to make sacrifice to reach consensus, and we're willing to do that. Republicans have to be willing to move their position also. Perhaps they're willing to finally acknowledge that given our deep debt, we can't afford government giveaways to millionaires and oil companies making record profits. Both acknowledgments would help close the deficit gap. Both would be big pieces to the puzzle. Mr. President, perhaps Republicans are willing to offer more reasonable cuts that the Democratic caucus can support. By reasonable cuts, I mean cuts that don't arbitrarily kick Head Start students out of class or rob college students of their Pell Grants. Both cuts the Senate resoundingly rejected yesterday. What I mean is that these cuts that don't pull the plug on renewable energy jobs, or cuts that fire thousands of workers at community health centers across the country, Republicans should be willing, Mr. President, to look at our country's substantial budget and find cuts more worthy than those that would weaken law enforcement, border security that keep us safe. I hope they will. I hope they'll join Democrats in saving money by tackling waste, fraud, and abuse. I hope they will join us in making tough choices and avoiding the temptation to make counterproductive cuts. Let's come together to cut in a way that strengthens our economy and doesn't weaken our economy. Let's cut in a way that makes our neighborhoods, our schools, our borders stronger, not weaker. As the negotiation process begins anew, I remind my Republican friends time is short. I also remind them that the deadline we face a week from tomorrow is the deadline that they set. We didn't set it. Democrats warned from the start that the process would take a month. Republicans would agree only to a period half as long as that, 2 weeks. Those 2 weeks are up, as I said, next Friday. So my message is this. My Republican colleagues, you should set the deadline, and the responsibility of meeting it is as much yours as it is ours. Both parties also share responsibility to be reasonable. So let's get to work. We cannot negotiate this in the media. We cannot negotiate this as if we're unwilling to give any ground. We cannot be stubborn and expect a solution. It's time to negotiate in good faith. It's time for all political posturing to end, and it's time for pragmatism, which is long overdue. Mr. President, I would also say to my friends in the House, the Senate has produced two very, very strong jobs bills. One is the FAA reauthorization, which is long overdue. That was a bipartisan bill, passed overwhelmingly here in the Senate, and would save or create 280,000 jobs. Pretty good step in the right direction. Just within the last 24 hours, we've passed the patent reform bill. That will create 300,000 jobs. These two jobs bills need to be completed by the House of Representatives so we can send them to the President. These two jobs bills are important. And the House should focus on jobs, not these arbitrary cuts that they've been making. I repeat, I would hope that the House would right away work on our jobs bills that have already passed the Senate, patents, and of course the FAA bill.
President. The Republican leader is recognized.
Throughout the week, I pointed out that our nation faces a day of reckoning on entitlements like Social Security and Medicare, and I've expressed my disappointment about the White House failure to lead on reforms that would save these programs at an opportune moment like our own. The best time to solve the kind of fiscal crisis we face is when the two parties share power in Washington. Everyone knows we either address these problems together or they won't be addressed at all. And everyone knows the President has to take the lead. That's why presidents from both parties have done just that during periods of divided government in the past. And that's why many of us are calling on this President to do the same for the good of the country now. But when it comes to job creation, the President isn't just failing to lead. In many cases, he's actually blocking the way. And nowhere is this more evident than in the area of energy exploration. Americans looking at the price of gas at the pump these days are justifiably upset. What they may not realize is that some in the administration are actively working to prevent us from increasing our own oil production here at home.
So this morning, with gas prices on the rise, I'd like to just step back for a minute and quickly review what the administration is doing to inhibit energy production right here at home. Taken together, it would be a pretty long list, including delays and suspensions and revocations and outright cancellations of lease permits, which translates to higher prices and fewer American jobs. So I'll just list a few of the highlights. The administration started by canceling oil and gas leases for domestic exploration. Immediately after taking office, the Secretary of Interior, Ken Salazar, canceled 77 oil and gas leases in the state of Utah. 1 year later, the administration suspended 61 more leases, this time in Montana. Shortly after canceling the Utah leases, Secretary Salazar extended the public comment period for new offshore drilling by another 6 months, dragging an already lengthy process out even further. Then immediately after the Gulf oil spill began last April, the administration imposed a 6-month moratorium on offshore drilling in the Gulf, even as it canceled energy exploration that was set to take place thousands of miles away from the spill in the Gulf up in the Arctic. 2 federal courts on 3 separate occasions have declared the moratorium in the Gulf unjust. The administration has ignored them. It's kept the ban in place despite these rulings, forcing the drillers who've been affected by it to relocate their rigs, and thousands of good-paying jobs they supported have actually gone to other parts of the world. So if you're wondering where the jobs are, a good place to start is the administration's efforts to block American energy exploration. Senator Murkowski points out that U.S. oil reserves at just 3 sources in Alaska, just 3 sources in Alaska, could replace crude oil imports from the Persian Gulf for nearly 65 years. 3 sources in Alaska, currently shut down, could replace crude oil imports for the Persian Gulf for 65 years. Yet all 3 are off limits due to decisions made by or continued by this administration. Behind all these actions is a complete disconnect. At a time when gas prices are climbing higher and higher, pinching pocketbooks and threatening an economic recovery, Democrats in Washington would rather ignore the fact that Americans will remain dependent on fossil fuel for decades to come. But we shouldn't be surprised by it. 2 months before the president was elected, the man he ended up choosing as his energy secretary told a reporter how he'd go about reducing America's dependence on oil. Somehow, he said, we have to figure out how to boost the price of gasoline to the levels in Europe. And if that was the strategy, Secretary Chu seems to be getting his wish. And the administration is doing just about everything it can to keep them there. Now is the time to be asking what we can do to increase domestic energy production, not proposing ways to squeeze American families even more. And that's why all of these actions by the administration, along with a tax hike on energy production some have proposed that will only be passed on to consumers in the form of even higher gas prices, is the very last thing Americans need right now. We should be looking for ways to lighten the burden on American families, not saddling them with a minivan tax. There's a better approach. Rather than squeezing the public and killing jobs with artificially higher prices, we should be looking for ways to increase domestic production, even as we promote alternative sources of energy for the future. And all of the above approach to energy production and the jobs that come with it, of the kind Republicans have been advocating for years, would capitalize on the abundant resources we already have right here at home, while at the same time looking for alternative sources of energy and new technologies that will free us from dependence on fossil fuels down the road. This, Mr. President, is a responsible approach. It protects existing jobs and creates new jobs at a time when Americans need them. It would reduce our dependence on foreign sources of oil. It honors the concerns Americans have right now about the rising price of gas, and it respects the reality that most of the cars in this country will run on gas for many, many years to come. But higher prices at the pump and fewer American jobs is the wrong answer. Now, Mr. President, on another subject, sadly, we lost David Broder yesterday. A lot has been said in the last 24 hours about that distinguished journalist. I'd like to add just a brief word of my own. I won't pretend to have known him well, although we did talk from time to time over the years. But I admired him greatly. You couldn't help but admire him, and a few things really stand out. First of all, in a city that's full of people in a rush to make an impression, David was the guy who took the time to get it right, day in and day out, without bombast or pretense. He wasn't looking to make an impression as much as he was trying to do his job and to do it well. The notoriety, of course, took care of itself. He was a workhorse first and foremost, a reporter who seemed to enjoy the work more than any attention he got for it. Everyone who worked with him seems to have a story about watching him knock on doors while he was in his late 70s or earnestly listening to a Midwest voter out in the cold. It all points to a sort of sturdiness of purpose and to the old virtues of patience and fairness, hard work, and a sense that other people's opinions were at least as valuable as his own. Add to that a deep curiosity and thoughtfulness and a childlike appreciation for the mechanics of democracy, and you've got a pretty good model for what political reporting is all about. I hesitate to say that he was conservative in temperament, if not in his politics. But that's what comes through. It became commonplace to say that David Broder was the dean of American political reporters. But I think it's worth understanding what people meant by that. It doesn't mean he was the most exciting guy in the room. He wasn't. It doesn't mean he had the most scoops. I'm not sure that he did. I think what it means, aside from the sheer length of his career, was that more than most people, his life came to take the shape of the profession that he chose in life. It became sort of an extension of himself. That's what seemed to give him so much joy and satisfaction in his work, along with the respect and admiration, and maybe even a little bit of envy of so many others. Republican or Democrat, liberal or conservative, young or old, we could use a few more David Broders. Mr. President, I yield the floor.
Under the previous order, the leadership time is reserved. Under the previous order, the Senate will be in a period of morning business until 2:15 p.m., with senators permitted to speak therein for up to 10 minutes each. The senator from Oklahoma is recognized.
Mr. President, I appreciate that. I was hoping to have a little bit more time this morning, so I'll cover this a little faster than I normally would, but it's so critical. I just got back from the Middle East, and I know the problems that are over there, and a lot of people are saying that the gas prices that are going up are a result partially of what's happening over there. That isn't the real problem. The real problem is a political problem. Let me first of all talk about the commitment that this administration has to cap and trade. Some people who have been around for a while can remember that way back at the Kyoto Treaty, I kind of led the opposition to ratifying that treaty. And then later on, for the next 10 years, they tried to pass cap-and-trade legislation. And since I chaired the committee at that time of jurisdiction, we looked at it and we thought, this isn't going to work, even by the admission of the Environmental Protection Agency. If we were to pass something like this in the United States, it wouldn't have any effect on reducing greenhouse gases. So I just would say this, something's happening this morning over in the House. They're looking at this issue, and we have introduced a legislation that has said that the EPA does not have the jurisdiction to regulate greenhouse gases, and I'll get to that in just a minute. But my message simply today is the higher gas prices are simply a product of this administration's goal. Just a minute ago, the minority leader said something that he quoted Stephen Chu, Secretary of Energy, and in that quote he said, quote, somehow we have to figure out a way to boost the price of gasoline to the levels in Europe. You know what it is right now in Europe, Mr. President? The United Kingdom, $7.87 a gallon. Italy, $7.54. France, $7.50. That's what this administration wants to do with our gas prices, and they have a motive for doing that. I think this, I can't just stop talking about the cap-and-trade agenda until we realize how it does affect things. You might remember, Mr. President, that during President Obama stated when he was running for office in 2008 and then restated it several times, he said, under cap-and-trade, electricity prices would necessarily skyrocket. And he had it right. The whole point of that it would skyrocket if we were to pass that. But that also has effect on all forms of energy. The House Energy and Power Subcommittee is voting this morning on the Energy Tax Prevention Act, which I introduced in the Senate, and it's introduced by Congressman Upton in the House. Now, the bottom line of the Energy Prevention Act is the EPA to make it so that they do not have the jurisdiction to do what they couldn't do legislatively. Let's remember what they tried to do. Starting with the Kyoto Treaty and all the way up to, for the following 10 years, they tried to pass in 2003 and 2005 and 2008 and 2009 a similar type of cap-and-trade. Now, what is the cost of cap-and-trade? The cost is, and this goes all the way back to the Kyoto Treaty, and when we have the estimates from the Wharton School, from MIT and many others, it would cost between $300 and $400 billion a year. Now, what that translates in my state of Oklahoma to $3,000 a year for each family who files a tax return. Now, what do you get for it? As I said a minute ago, by the admission of the Obama EPA, and that's Lisa Jackson, in response to a question that I asked it live on TV, that it's going to be, it wouldn't, I said, what effect would this have on worldwide emissions of CO2? And the answer was, well, it really wouldn't, because that only affects the United States of America. Now, here's the reality. It could actually increase it, because as our jobs go overseas, they go places like China and Mexico, and places where there are fewer emission controls. So it could have just the opposite effect. But nonetheless, I say this because there are people wandering around out there that say that we should do something about emissions, and yet I want to make sure that those people are listening, and that even if we did this, it wouldn't have any effect on their hope is that if we restrict enough supply, the price will increase, and we can then simply shift to what they call green energy. You know, I think it's important that people understand that the Republican position on this is, yes, we want green energy, we want renewables, but we also want coal and natural gas and nuclear and oil. These are the things that can run America today, and this is what we are doing. You know, back in Oklahoma, they're logical people, so they ask a question, you know, what would it be if they don't want oil, they don't want gas, they don't want coal, how do you run this machine called America? The answer is, you can't. Now, let me just state, unfortunately, there isn't the time I was hoping there would be, but it's not just the administration, not just Secretary Chu, but others in the administration. Alan Kruger, the Assistant Secretary for Economic Policy, he said the administration believes that it is no longer sufficient to address our nation's energy needs by finding more fossil fuels. They're anti-fossil fuels, and yet they admit the tax subsidies they call are currently provided, the oil and gas industry. They lead to inefficiency by encouraging an overinvestment in domestic resources in this industry. But this is the critical thing right here. It's an admission, and this came from Alan Kruger. Quote, the small change in domestic producer costs, which I call a tax increase, could cause some production to shift from domestic to foreign suppliers. There it is, folks. That means we would have to depend on the Middle East to depend more to import more of our energy from the Middle East. By the way, I think it's important to note that the Congressional Research Service, and I think we all respect the work that they do, they came out with a report, and they have stated, and no one has been able to refute this yet, that the United States of America now has the largest supply of recoverable reserves in gas, oil, and in coal. Now, we keep hearing people say it's only 3% of the amount and we're using 25% of energy, we're producing 3%. That's just flat not true, and I think people understand that, because they use that as proven reserves. You can't prove reserves until you drill, and we have a political problem that the Democrats don't want us to drill. And now, in that case, we have to fall back on the other way of looking at it, and that is recoverable reserves. And I would say this, that we're in a position right now to have the recoverable reserves, as this chart shows here. This is the recoverable reserves that we have right now. This is America's true oil potential. This is what we could produce here. And this is the proven reserves that they talk about. Well, the bottom line is we have, and I don't think anyone, I think it's incontrovertible, we do have the world's largest supply of oil, gas, and coal. This chart here shows that the amount of oil, gas, and coal that we have is greater than that of China, Iran, and Canada, all three put together. Now, this is what we've got here. And so people say, wait a minute, if that's the problem, why are we importing from foreign countries? We're importing from foreign countries because we have a political problem. We have a majority in this Senate, and they had a majority in the House and the President who are trying to continue this policy of not allowing us to develop our own resources. We're the only country in the world that doesn't develop our own resources. Now, I do know that there are a lot of problems out there. I do know that we are going to end up certainly we have problems in the Middle East and all that, but when I go home and I talk to my wife, the number one problem is what she's paying for gas. And it's not going to get any better unless we can re-lose it. How many people went to school and didn't learn about supply and demand? We have all the supply we need in the United States of America when you add what we get from Mexico and Canada to be totally independent from the Middle East. But they won't let us develop it. 83% of our federal lands right now is off limits, and it's a political problem because they won't want to do it. I can remember when we had the oil spill down in the Gulf. Some of the far-left environmentalists were rejoicing that it happened. They're rejoicing because they could parlay this into not allowing us to drill for our own natural resources. Finally, last week, the EPA issued its first permit for deepwater drilling in the Gulf. That was due to a lot of the political pressure that's been put on and a realization that the American people are not as dumb as they think they are, and that we can develop our own resources and we can resolve this problem that we have. So I would say this, that if you look at what we have right now in reserves, in terms of recoverable reserves in oil and in gas, we have enough right now to run this country, enough oil for this is in recoverable reserves, for 90 years. We have enough gas in recoverable reserves to run this country for 90 years. That's 90 years, and that's not including shale. I think we all know about the great shale deposits that are taking place out in the western part of the United States, and that is gigantic compared to what we have available to us. We hear about methane hydrates, but I didn't include these. The reason I don't include shale and methane hydrates is because they're not recoverable today. There's not something we can do today. If we lifted all of our restrictions, that wouldn't give us tomorrow the shale reserves that are out there, nor the methane hydrates. But what we would be able to do is start further developing those. But even without those, we can run this country called America for 90 years on our own oil and gas. And then we go to coal. And the significance of the coal reserves right now, we have 28% of the world's coal, and in fact, the CRS cites America's recoverable coal reserves to be 262 billion short tons, and for perspective, the United States only uses $1.2 billion of short tons of coal each year. So what we have is oil, gas, and coal, and this is enough. The only problem is we have an administration who, by their own admission, wants to kill oil, gas, and coal and fossil fuels. And we can't do this without the change in the administration or the change in policy. And I think as you see the gas prices go up, and all of America should listen to this, all they have to do is remember what it was that this administration's position is, and that is, as Stephen Chu said, as the Secretary of Energy, he told the Wall Street Journal in 2008, somehow we have to figure out how to boost the price of gasoline to the levels in Europe. This is President Obama's position. And if we take this position, we are going to have the gas prices going up, and you can talk around it all you want, but supply and demand is a very simple thing. We have the potential supply in this country to run this country for the next almost 100 years on just what we have developed. With that, I know the senator from Kansas is anxious to make a statement, and I would yield the floor.
Mr. President, I suggest the absence of a quorum.
The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Akaka. Mr. Alexander.
General speeches for most of the day in the Senate today. At about 10:30 this morning, Kansas Republican Senator Jerry Moran, actually it is past 10:30, well shortly he will be giving his maiden speech on the Senate floor. About 2:15, senators will consider a judicial nomination with a vote on that nomination scheduled for 2:30.
Ms. Ayotte.
And again, shortly on the Senate floor, we expect remarks from Kansas Republican Senator Jerry Moran. He is scheduled to give his maiden speech on the floor in just a few moments. And at 2:15, senators are set to consider a judicial nomination, and a clarification, a vote on that nomination, is now set for 3 p.m. Eastern. Yesterday, the Senate did take 2 votes on agreeing to fund the federal government for the rest of this fiscal year. Neither measure passed, so debate and negotiations on federal spending will continue behind the scenes. Reuters is reporting that House Republicans are crafting a new stopgap funding bill that will extend that deadline past March 18th, when current funding will end. Without an extension, of course, the government's facing a shutdown, as it did back in 1995.
espresso.
President, I ask unanimous consent.
The senator from Kansas is recognized without objection. Under the previous order, the senator from Kansas is recognized for 15 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to speak to the Senate up to 25 minutes.
Is there objection? Without objection, so ordered.
Mr. President, thank you. I'm humbled today to deliver my initial and very first speech on the floor of the United States Senate and to discuss a topic of vital importance to our country's future, our nation's fiscal health. It's a privilege to join the distinguished members of this chamber and to work alongside my friend of nearly 40 years and colleague, Senator Pat Roberts. We met some time ago when I came to Washington, D.C. as a summer intern, the summer of 1974 in Watergate, for a congressman named Sebelius. And my colleague, Pat Roberts, was his chief of staff and has been my friend since. I'm also humbled to follow in the footsteps of Governor Sam Brownback and the many who came before him and whose names are etched in this desk where I now stand. I'm mindful of their service, and particularly that of Senator Bob Dole, who served Kansans for nearly 3 decades in this seat. During the nearly 36 years on Capitol Hill, Senator Dole became known as a leader who worked relentlessly to forge alliances in order to pass significant legislation. Today, he serves as a role model for those who have dedicated their lives to public service. I thank Senator Dole for his call yesterday, wishing me well today, but I thank him more for his distinguished service to our country and to Kansans. I know the love and respect that the people of his hometown of Russell have for him, and I will work to honor his legacy. I grew up just down the road from Bob Dole's hometown in a smaller town, Plainville, a place where folks know their neighbors and look after them. Much of what I know about people I learned early in my life by working at the local hardware store, the swimming pool, the drugstore, and on my paper route. I learned that there is good in every person and that satisfaction in life comes from what you do for others rather than what you do for yourself. I learned that each family's joys and sorrows are increased and diminished when they're shared with their neighbors and friends. And I learned what it means to put others first, just as my mom and dad always have. I was fortunate to grow up with loving parents who taught me the value of hard work, the importance of education, and the necessity of integrity. In fact, they once made me return the 3 cents I'd found when I turned in a pop bottle from my neighbor's back porch. My dad, a World War II veteran, worked in the oil fields of western Kansas, and my mom, who grew up in the Depression, was the lady you paid your light bill to. They were my Sunday school teachers and my Boy Scout leaders, and they always encouraged me to do my best. My parents worked hard, avoided debt, paid their bills, and wanted to make sure my sister and I would have the chance to pursue our dreams. I was also fortunate to have many teachers who instilled in me a love for learning and a desire to explore the world beyond our city limits. As a kid, I enjoyed reading about politics and history and government, and people like my fourth grade teacher, Mrs. Broder, helped me to develop an interest in our country and public service. Because of my teacher's interest in me, I'm part of the first generation in our family to attend and graduate from college. Nothing in my background would suggest that I would have the opportunity to serve as a member of the United States Senate. That says something about our country and the opportunity that we as Americans have to dream big and to pursue those dreams. It also says something about my home state and the special way of life we lead. The pioneering spirit of those who settled our state 150 years ago and tamed the West lives on in Kansas today. We work hard. We come together to find common sense solutions and try to make a difference in our communities, our state, and our nation. We also strive to provide a better future for our kids and grandkids so they can pursue their dreams and reach their goals. This is the reason I got involved in public service, and it's the reason I remain involved today. Since coming to Congress in 1997, I've made it a priority to stay connected with Kansans. And so I return home on the weekends. And whether I'm at the grocery store or attending church or filling the tank with gas, the conversations I have with Kansans matter to me and impact the work I do here in Washington. When I served in the House of Representatives, I held annual town hall meetings in each of the 69 counties in the district, following the lead of my predecessor, then Congressman Pat Roberts. I have continued this tradition as a senator and have begun traveling throughout all 105 counties in our state to hear directly from Kansans. And I'm committed to making sure their voices are heard in our nation's capital. Last spring in Kansas, I watched our oldest daughter walk across her college graduation stage, and it was another defining moment for me. Our country is facing enormous fiscal challenges, and if we fail to act, our children's future is at risk. I believe all members of Congress, and in fact every American, has the responsibility to be a good steward of what has been passed on to us. And so at that moment, that graduation event, I renewed my commitment to do my part to turn this country around. I'm one of many voices to express this concern. In 1985, President Reagan took the podium during his second inaugural address and spoke about one of his greatest concerns, our nation's deficit spending. He told the American people that 50 years of deficit spending had finally brought our nation to the time of reckoning. He said, "We've come to a turning point, a moment for hard decisions. We must act now to protect future generations from government's desire to spend its citizens' money and to tax them into servitude when the bills become due." I'm here today, 26 years later, to issue, unfortunately, the same warning. We are again facing a turning point in our country's history, and we no longer can delay difficult decisions. When President Reagan stood and spoke those words, our national debt was $1.8 trillion. Today, that number has soared to $14 trillion, slowing our economic growth and threatening the prosperity of future generations who will have to pay for our irresponsibility. Our government borrows 40 cents of every dollar it spends, and half our national debt is held by foreigners, many who do not share our interests. The simple truth is our nation's debt is the responsibility of several Congresses and presidents who have allowed us to live well beyond our means for way too long. Members of both political parties have ignored this growing fiscal crisis and left it up to others in the future to deal with. In my travels in Kansas, I'm often asked, how can Washington continue to spend and borrow so much? What will our country be like for our kids and grandkids? I join Kansans in voicing these concerns. In just the last 2 years, government spending has grown nearly 25%, and we have had a record trillion-dollar budget deficits. This year, the federal government will spend $3.7 trillion and collect $2.2 trillion. That's a shortfall of $1.5 trillion. Common sense. Kansas common sense tells us this pattern cannot continue. Some will say we need to raise taxes to get us out of this mess. But the reality is we don't have a revenue problem, we have a spending problem. Experience shows us that money raised by Washington, D.C. results in more spending in Washington, D.C. The debate about government spending is often seen as a philosophical or an academic or a partisan issue. But the truth is that out-of-control borrowing and spending has very real consequences on the daily lives of Americans. When we continue to fail to balance the budget, it means increasing inflation, higher interest rates, uncertainty in the economy, which results in less business investment and fewer jobs. This is not an academic discussion. It is not a partisan discussion. It is about the future of our nation. And we were not elected to ignore these problems, but rather to confront them. Congress can and should do what Kansans do, make decisions based on solid values and be held accountable for those decisions. Just a few weeks ago, the International Monetary Fund issued a report outlining just how serious our financial situation has become. And America wasn't the only country that came under this scrutiny by the IMF. Japan, for example, has also fallen behind in its deficit goals. And to make matters worse, Standard & Poor's downgraded Japan's credit rating out of concern of the country's ability to tackle their debt. If we do not face the reality and take serious steps now to confront this challenge, we will find ourselves in a similar position. The impact will be disastrous, just as it's been in Greece and Portugal and Ireland. Unfortunately, this reality has not yet sunk in enough places in Washington, D.C. President Obama asked Congress to increase the debt ceiling, allowing our country to take on even more debt. But it would be irresponsible to allow more spending without a serious plan in place to reduce the deficit. Americans are looking for leadership in Washington to help create jobs and get our economy back on its feet. But lately they've heard a lot of partisan rhetoric, and all they've seen is more government spending. It is time for our government to change direction and to change dramatically. We must work together to restrain spending and to put in place pro-growth measures that create jobs. By saying both no to more spending and yes to pro-jobs measures, we will reduce the uncertainty in the marketplace, encourage business investment, become more competitive in the global economy, and, most importantly, create employment. The best way to get our spending under control is to get a budget and stick to it. And one of our basic responsibilities of Congress is to produce an annual budget, and yet we're once again operating under temporary spending measures called a continuing resolution because the Democrat leadership failed to pass a budget plan last year. Congress has taken virtually no step to address this deficit spending. We've got to come together and see that we do so, and we must pass a common-sense budget that reduces our deficit this year, next year, and well into the future. Last month, President Obama sent his 2012 budget message to Congress. Instead of moving toward fiscal responsibility, the proposal contains more of the same borrow and spend mentality. It proposes $8.7 trillion in new spending, $1.6 trillion in new taxes, and doubles the national debt by the end of his 4-year term. At no point during the President's 10-year budget projection would our government spend less than it's taking in. Rather than spend more, we must close the gap between what government takes in and what it spends. We've looked for a number of ways to do that. Last month, I introduced the Reset Act to rescind $45 billion in unspent stimulus funds and direct those dollars toward paying down the deficit. Another common-sense measure that I've long supported is a constitutional amendment to require a balanced budget. Unfortunately, when members of Congress are not required to prioritize their spending, they simply borrow more over a long period of time. This proposal, this constitutional amendment, would limit federal spending to 20% of gross domestic product and would require 2/3 of a majority of Congress to raise the taxes. By forcing Congress to be disciplined, to live within a budget, we will turn away from record deficits and back to fiscal responsibility. In addition to living by a responsible budget, we must also address our long-term unfunded liabilities, including Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. Last year, mandatory spending made up 56% of our entire budget. This percentage will only increase in years ahead as more Americans retire and fewer workers are there to replace them. Already, Social Security pays out more than it collects, and its total debt will increase over $500 billion in the next 10 years. Medicaid spending consumes nearly 1/4 of state budgets and will further burden states who are now required to pay for the vast Medicaid expansion contained in the recent health care reform law. Furthermore, Medicare's unfunded liabilities are $37 trillion. This staggering sum is nearly 3 times the amount of our current national debt. This challenge cannot be ignored any longer. We must pursue change and reform, but it will take the leadership of President Obama and the willingness of both political parties. We are ready to have that conversation with the President, and we expect his leadership. Finally, history shows that economic growth starts with the private sector. So Congress must create an environment where entrepreneurship and business can flourish. Small businesses are the backbone of the American economy and generated 65% of the new jobs over the last 2 decades. They employ half of our private sector workers, and clearly small business is the engine of job creation and critical to our country's economic success. Business owners, as I tour plants in Kansas, will say, what next? What next harmful thing is Washington, D.C. going to do that puts me out of business? For too long, Washington has increased the regulatory and tax burden on businesses at the expense of jobs. Mountains of government regulations and higher taxes are undercutting any efforts to create jobs and erode our global competitiveness, especially in manufacturing and agriculture and energy. Rather than hiring new workers, businesses are spending their resources on complying with ever-changing regulations and increased taxes, or worse, those businesses are leaving our country. We need to be doing all we can to put people back to work and grow the economy, and that includes replacing our convoluted tax code and eliminating bureaucratic intrusion into our free market economy. Maintaining a strong business environment at home must be coupled with opening new foreign markets for American goods and agricultural commodities around the world. In today's global economy, we cannot afford to sit on the sideline while other countries move forward. Each day that passes, we risk losing more of our markets and our market share to competing nations. Across the country, thousands of Americans depend upon exports for jobs, including more than 1/4 of all manufacturing workers in Kansas. By increasing our nation's exports, we will create jobs and opportunities for all Americans without raising taxes or increasing the federal budget. While our nation's unemployment rate hovers between 9% and 10%, it is simply inexcusable to not do what we know we can do that will create jobs in America. One common-sense way to open more markets is to pass trade agreements with Colombia and Panama and South Korea, which have been stalled in Congress. And during this delay, while Congress dithers, Colombia has moved toward trade deals with Canada and Chile, the EU, Brazil, and Argentina, just to name a few of our competitors. Comparably, tariffs have caused American farmers to lose nearly 20% of total agricultural markets in Colombia over the last 5 years. It's past time to pass these trade agreements and to create more markets and therefore more jobs for Americans. And for the U.S. to remain competitive in a global market, Congress must also develop a comprehensive energy policy that allows for ample energy supplies, which are both affordable and reliable. Rising gas prices and recent events in the Middle East have demonstrated once again the importance of having access to reliable energy. No single form of energy can provide the answer. To meet our country's energy needs, we must develop the traditional sources of oil and natural gas and coal and encourage the development of renewable energy sources like biofuels, wind, solar, geothermal, and hydropower. Expand the use of nuclear energy and encourage conservation. Lastly, we need to repeal the flawed health care law and replace it with common-sense changes that reduce increasing costs and promote choice in our health care system, such as increasing competition in the insurance market, giving states the flexibility to address health needs of their unique populations, enacting medical liability reform, and enabling small businesses to pool together to offer coverage at lower prices. These ideas have bipartisan support and are backed by the American people because we know they will work. Congress should be an ally of the people, not an adversary. Congress has the responsibility to create an environment where free market can succeed so business can move forward with confidence and start again creating jobs. You know, in Washington, D.C., it's often easy to forget what's most important in the midst of all the talk of partisan politics, the next election, or the latest poll. When I need a reminder, I'll take a walk. And I'll walk from this magnificent Capitol to the Lincoln Memorial. And between those 2 points, I now pass the World War II Memorial. I pass the Vietnam Wall, and on my way back, I'll walk by the Korean War Memorial. These memorials to our citizen soldiers help put everything in its proper perspective. Our freedoms are so important that our nation's sons and daughters were willing to risk their lives. These brave men and women didn't sacrifice for greater good of our country and to ensure that their children and grandchildren would also experience American freedom and liberty. We have before us an opportunity to set aside the game of politics and to work together to confront the enormous challenges before us. Whether we have the courage to tackle our fiscal crisis now will determine the course of our country's future into the next generation as well. And I stand ready to work with all my colleagues in this chamber to do what it takes to get our economy back on track. Americans are known for their enterprising spirit and strong resolve, and our country will recover when we begin to live within our means and create a pro-growth business and job environment. Last month, we recognized the 100th anniversary of President Reagan's birth. It is a fitting time for all Americans to honor the memory of a man whose leadership guided our country through many challenges. Our 40th president believed in the greatness of America. He believed in the principles of individual liberty, of self-government, and free enterprise. And he believed that there are no limits to growth and human progress when men and women are free to follow their dreams. It is with that same optimism and hope for the future that I stand here today. I did not come to Washington, D.C. for personal glory. I came to Washington because I believe we have a responsibility to be good stewards of what we've been given and to pass to the next generation the life we love and lead. We know what America can and should look like. When I took this oath of office about 6 weeks ago, standing just a few feet in front of me, I pledged to support and defend the United States Constitution and to faithfully fulfill the duties of this office, so help me God. And I will continue to seek His help and His guidance in the days ahead, knowing that in Him all things are possible. As I humbly begin my new responsibilities, I remain committed to leading with Kansas common sense and to making the tough decisions necessary today so that tomorrow and every day thereafter our children and grandchildren can live in America with freedom and liberty, and that they will have the opportunity to dream big and to pursue those dreams. If I'm successful, I will have fulfilled my responsibilities. If I'm successful, I will have fulfilled my responsibilities as a parent, just like my mom and dad, and as an American who believes our country's better and brighter days lie ahead. I yield back the balance of my time.
The Republican leader is recognized.